Okay, let's dive into this, because today we are turning conventional dating advice completely upside down. Almost every internet guru out there is going to tell you to avoid the friend zone at all costs, like it's some sort of inescapable trap, right? Well, what if I told you they have it entirely backwards? Stop trying to escape the friend zone. What if the friend zone isn't a dead end at all, but is actually a psychological cheat code to practically date your crush before she even realizes what's happening? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're breaking down the science of why being just friends might actually be the ultimate psychological long game.
Our source material reveals an absolutely fascinating reality about modern relationships. By entering the friendship phase and doing what we call the extra-mile friend things, you are completely bypassing her natural defenses. You're doing the heavy lifting of building an intimate connection without the intense pressure of a formal date. In doing so, you're essentially providing the emotional security of a boyfriend. As the research notes, by taking this route, you are practically halfway already dating her. Literally. All you eventually have to do is make it known that you want her in your life permanently, and you're basically set.
To really understand why this works, we've got to look at how human psychology operates under the hood. When you jump straight into dating mode with someone you barely know, it triggers an evolutionary panic. Her guard instantly goes up. She has to evaluate you as a potential threat, or this massive life change. But friendship mode, that completely bypasses those evolutionary defenses. Friendship slowly and covertly builds deep emotional safety. You basically get to prove your value and trustworthiness over time without setting off any alarm bells whatsoever.
So how exactly do we execute this strategy? Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll unpack the mechanics of the friend zone cheat code. Then, we'll look at breaking down defenses with the vulnerability loop. Third, we'll cover the ultimate blueprint for endless dialogue, the Ford conversation method. Fourth, we'll learn a literal mind-reading trick called testing the laughter radar. And finally, escalating with psychology.
Let's start right off with part 1, the friend zone cheat code.
To make this long game work, you absolutely have to reframe how you view being a friend. It is not a consolation prize, it's a strategic advantage. It is completely scientifically acceptable to sit in the friend zone for months, building this unbreakable rapport before you ever make a move to start dating. The secret here? Doing things ordinary guys just wouldn't do. Notice the specific actions we've highlighted from our sources, leaving thoughtful little notes on our car windshield, sending consistent good morning texts, and actively talking through her problems while genuinely sympathizing with her. By taking these specific actions, you establish a powerful foundation of trust and separate yourself from literally everyone else competing for her attention.
Moving on to section 2, the vulnerability loop. But how do you actually take a standard friendship and inject it with deep emotional intimacy? Well, we need to proactively break down the evolutionary barriers humans have against trusting new people. This barrier is known as stranger danger, that natural evolutionary instinct wired into our brains to be highly wary of new people. And this brilliantly illustrates why vulnerability is a superpower. Psychologically, we like and trust people who show trust in us first. When you prove that you trust her, her brain is instinctively compelled to lower its guard and reciprocate in the exact same fashion.
The single most effective way to trigger this loop is to share a personal, slightly embarrassing secret. Tell her something that not many people know. For example, our source jokingly mentions confessing that you have 11 toes or dropping a mildly controversial personal opinion. The specifics honestly don't matter as much as the function. When you share a quirky, embarrassing secret, you open the door for trust. She notices you trust her with this information, and she will subconsciously begin trusting you way more in return.
Which leads us to section 3, the Ford conversation method.
Building this bond requires a whole lot of talking, of course. So if you ever struggle with your brain completely freezing up or you hate dealing with awkward silences, the Ford method is your ultimate blueprint for endless conversation. It stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. For family, try using non sequiturs or observations, like point out a loud guy on a dance floor and say he reminds you of your energetic older brother. It naturally bridges into a high rapport topic. For occupation, we'll talk about a very specific rule in just a second. For recreation, when she mentions a hobby, just ask, why is this activity so exciting for you? It makes her feel deeply listened to. And finally, dreams. Wait until you've built up some solid rapport, look up at the night sky and say something like, the universe is so vast, do you ever dream of accomplishing something bigger than a 9-to-5? I know, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it rapidly builds profound rapport because it shows you actually support her biggest ambitions. Now, a massive warning when talking about the O in Ford, occupation. You absolutely must avoid interview mode. When she says she's a school teacher, do not just fire back with, what subject? What school? How old are the kids? That feels exactly like an interrogation. Instead, you have to add a personal comment before asking the next question. Say something like, wow, I always wanted to be a teacher when I was younger. There's something so fulfilling about inspiring others. Sharing how you feel before asking your next question keeps the conversation flowing naturally and, more importantly, comfortably.
Section 4. Testing the laughter radar.
So you're building trust, you're having these deep forward conversations, but how do you know if this long game is actually working? Let's try a real-world mind-reading trick. I want you to picture being in a social situation with a group of friends. Someone tells a joke, and everyone erupts into laughter. In that exact millisecond, pay very, very close attention. Where do her eyes go when she laughs?
It turns out humans subconsciously look at the person they feel closest to or are most interested in when they laugh. It is a completely involuntary psychological response. You can't fake it. So put yourself in situations where you make her laugh and just watch her eyes. If her eyes immediately dart to you the exact millisecond she starts laughing, you have a psychological green light. She is subconsciously interested in you.
Let's move to and see how this builds into our final step. Section 5. Escalating with psychology.
Once you see that green light on your radar, you need to know how to confidently cross the finish line. We're going to escalate the relationship, but we are going to do it using proven psychology, starting with the Benjamin Franklin effect. This is a fascinating psychological phenomenon where asking someone to do a small favor for you actually makes them subconsciously like you more. Benjamin Franklin famously used this exact technique on his political rivals. By asking them to lend him a rare book, he got them to like him and completely won them over.
Here's how the action steps break down for you. Step 1. Ask for a tiny favor, like picking up a dropped pencil, passing a piece of paper, or doing a really small errand. Step 2. She completes the favor. Step 3. Consistency bias kicks in. Her brain basically thinks, well, I just did a favor for him, so I must like him. It rationalizes the action by increasing her affection for you. A quick warning, though. Do not overdo this, or she will definitely feel like you're just using her. Keep it small, keep it occasional.
Next up, you need to break the touch barrier without being creepy. You do this through safe, non-sexual touch escalation. Play a quick game of rock, paper, scissors. Ask her for an item and gently grab it out of her hand. Or come up with a fun, custom handshake just for the two of you. The whole idea here is to show her you're comfortable around her and to gauge her reaction. If she seems totally fine with it, boom, you're building physical comfort. If she seems hesitant, you immediately back off. It's a completely safe, low-stakes testing ground.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that giant number 2 right in the middle here. 2 squirts of cologne is the absolute maximum needed to instantly make yourself more attractive through great hygiene. The source material is very, very clear on this. You do not need to douse yourself in a half-gallon of Axe body spray. Just take a shower, use deodorant, wear clean clothes, and apply 1 squirt of cologne to the wrist and 1 near the neckline. That is it. Smelling presentable is a massive, subconscious attraction trigger.
Furthermore, to make this whole psychological long game work, you need to be a compelling person on your own. You need to have an intense passion. Our source gives a fantastic example here. Even if your hobby is something incredibly obscure, like carving chainsaw art, it doesn't matter. As long as it is genuine and not faked, having an intense passion adds massive respect and makes you infinitely more attractive. Whether it's programming, motorcycling, cooking, reading, put in the time. There is something undeniably magnetic about someone who is genuinely passionate about their craft. Which brings us to our final foundational rule, and a question I really want to leave you with today. Imagine selling a book with an amazing, beautiful cover, but inside the pages are completely blank. That is exactly what you're doing if you try to get a girl to like you, but you have a boring life. So ask yourself, do you have a life she actually wants to be a part of? The friend zone cheat code works absolute wonders, but only if the person waiting at the finish line is someone constantly striving to improve themselves. Go build an amazing life. Use these psychological tools to build deep, unbreakable rapport and watch how smoothly friendship transitions into something so much more. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.